Welcome to our 16th day of this progressive meditation series. Perhaps in the last 15 days, you've noticed as you sit and become more quiet that thoughts just rise up out of seemingly nowhere. You've noticed how we aren't really in control of these thoughts in the moment. This nowhere is your subconscious. It's what's below our level of perception. Our subconscious is constantly working to take care of us in the best way it knows how. And this includes problem solving, planning, strategizing, simulating, and rehashing. All of this just to help us figure out our next step. However, your subconsciousness is ultimately directed by your higher level consciousness. So what would happen if you consciously decided that there didn't need to be a next step because everything is perfect right now? This is a hard pill to swallow, especially if you're coming from the opposite end of feeling very unsatisfied. And this is why one of the key principles of ethical yogic living is contentment. For meditation practice today, see if you can find a small kernel of contentment. How would you feel on all levels of your being? That's physically, energetically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. How would you feel if you really believed that everything was perfect the way it is right now? Take this concept into your meditation practice today and watch what happens. Take just a couple moments here to settle in. If you need to, move a little bit. Take some releasing, relaxing breaths. Find your meditative seat or posture. And let's begin. Come back to your surroundings. Gently open the eyes. Take just a moment here to reflect on the practice you just experienced. So, going back to contentment, when we can cultivate more contentment in ourselves, when we strive less, then the mind tends to be more quiet. That's really hard to do in the culture we live in today, where we're told that we don't ever have enough, that we won't ever be enough, that we need something else. So we have to go against that messaging and cultivate to the best of our abilities our own internal contentment. Now there's another principle that goes hand in hand with contentment. That's moderation. You may have picked up on it by now, but it stands to be repeated that one of the ways we can improve our meditation practice is to make our internal state more stable. Yes, becoming more durable and more rugged and less prone to disturbances is also one way to do this, and there are many practices to help us achieve that end. However, just because you have a big, strong, durable machine doesn't mean that you try and constantly stress it and test it. You want that machine to be at maximum readiness for whatever comes next. And when you do stress it and test it out, you do so in a very precise and intentional way. But before we even try to build more ruggedness into ourselves, why not first remove the unnecessary disturbances? And this is why moderation is prescribed. When we are moderate with ourselves, we prevent the swings and transients that disrupt our steady state. We can't avoid all disruptions, but why not minimize them? For example, we can circle back to the topic of nutrition. In a measurable way, what we put into our bodies creates physiological changes that also show up in our energetic and emotional layers, and so on. When we go from ravenously hungry to stuffed, we've created a large swing that will have cascading effects. Do this test yourself and watch blood sugar markers and insulin levels swing wildly. Look at your level of alertness and your ability to think clearly when you do this. If instead we are more moderate and we don't let ourselves become ravenously hungry, nor do we gorge ourselves, the physiological changes become much smaller, and our bodies are then better able to handle that. Our bodies have built-in buffers so that when small changes happen, they don't impact other things. You can say the same thing about our activity levels. We're going from very inactive states to overactive states all of a sudden tends to create injuries. In those cases, we'd be better off with more consistency and proceeding at a slower, more gradual change rate. I'm sure you can think of many more examples where aiming for moderation yields better results than jumping from one extreme to another. So I'll leave you with this question. What is the area in your life that most requires moderation, that would yield the greatest results if the swings in that area were tamed? I'll see you next time for day number 17.